Welcome to Whole Bible Study with your host, Tad Inoue. Today's topic study is centered on one of the oldest and most frequently asked questions in human history. Is there a God? Now, before we begin, I want to offer a brief and transparent disclosure. I do believe that God exists. I do not claim certainty, and I do not believe that God's existence can be proven in a strict or absolute sense. I'm still asking questions and I'm still learning. In this study, I am not trying to persuade you to believe what I believe. My goal is to examine the major arguments, the kinds of evidence people appeal to, the limitations that we face when we're asking this question. I want to approach this honestly, carefully, and without assuming that belief or disbelief is the correct starting point. When we ask the question, is there a God? The first thing we must do is define what we mean by the word God. Without clear definitions, discussions quickly become confused. In this study, we are not yet talking about the God of any specific religion. We are using the word God in a general sense to refer to a possible transcendent or ultimate reality that exists beyond the physical universe and may be the source or explanation of existence itself. Some people understand God as personal, meaning conscious, intentional, and relational. Others understand God as impersonal, meaning more like an underlying principle or foundation of reality. Still, others reject all such concepts entirely. These distinctions matter because different definitions of God require different kinds of arguments and different kinds of evidence. We also need to clarify what we mean by evidence. Evidence is information that counts in favor or against a claim. Different claims require different kinds of evidence. Historical claims rely on documents, archaeology, and collaboration. Scientific claims rely on observation, experimentation, and repeatability. Philosophical claims rely on logic, coherence, and explanatory power. The claim God exists is not a scientific claim in the narrow sense, because God is typically defined as a beyond physical measurement. That does not make the claim meaningless, but it does mean that we must be careful about what kinds of arguments are appropriate and what they can realistically establish. The more common approach to the God question begins with the fact that anything exists at all. This approach is often called a cosmological or contingency argument. The basic idea is that everything we observe appears to depend on something else. Philosophers describe such things as contingent, meaning they do not explain their own existence. The argument asks whether this claim of dependence can go on forever, or whether there must be something that exists independently and explains the existence of everything else. Some people conclude that there must be a non-contingent reality that exists by necessity and grounds everything else, and they call that reality God. Others argue that the universe itself may simply exist without explanation. Both positions are logically possible, but both raise questions. If everything needs an explanation, why would the universe be the exception? If not, everything needs an explanation. Why introduce God at all? The argument does not force agreement, but it clarifies what is at stake when we talk about explanation. Another approach focuses on the structure and intelligibility of the universe. The laws of nature have behaved consistently, and human reasoning is capable of understanding them. Mathematics describes physical reality with striking effectiveness. Some people interpret this as evidence that reality is grounded in rationality. Others respond that this is exactly what we should expect, because only a universe with stable patterns could produce observers capable of noticing and studying those patterns. These are competing explanations rather than proofs, and choosing between them involves judgment. Moral experience is another area people often consider. Many people experience moral obligations as real and binding, not merely as personal preferences. Concepts like justice, cruelty, responsibility, and dignity are often treated as if they matter independently of individual opinion. Some philosophers argue that this suggests morality has a source beyond human agreement. Others argue that moral behavior can be explained through evolution, social cooperation, and cultural development. Explaining how moral behaviors arise, however, is not the same as explaining whether moral values are objectively true. This distinction is important and remains unresolved. Any serious inquiry must also address arguments against the existence of God. One of the strongest challenges is the problem of suffering. If a powerful and good God exists, why does intense and seemingly unnecessary suffering occur? This includes natural disasters, disease, and injustice. This argument does not deny meaning or morality. It challenges whether belief in God is capable with the world as we experience it. Many responses have been proposed, but none eliminate the tension entirely. Another challenge is often called divine hiddenness. If God exists and desires relationship, why is God not more evident? Why do sincere and thoughtful people reach different conclusions despite honest seeking? This challenge does not disprove God, but it raises serious questions about belief, evidence, and responsibility. At this point, the Bible becomes relevant, not as proof, but as anthropology. The Bible is a collection of texts written over centuries by different communities. It reflects belief, doubt, protest, confidence, and silence. Some texts assume God's presence, others question it openly. Entire books wrestle with injustice, suffering, and meaning. This internal diversity shows that the question of God has never been simple, even for ancient believers. Archaeology contributes in a limited but important way. It can confirm historical contexts and show how religious ideas developed over time. It cannot confirm or deny metaphysical claims. It helps us understand how belief functioned in human societies, not whether the belief itself is true. Psychology and sociology are also a matter. They also matter. Human beings are meaning-seeking and pattern-seeking. Religious belief can foster community, resilience, and moral responsibility. It can also be misused for control or harm. Explaining why humans believe does not automatically explain whether what they believe is true, but it does remind us that belief is shaped by experience, culture, and history. At this stage, we can say this clearly. There is no single argument that conclusively proves God exists, and there is no single argument that conclusively proves God does not exist. What we have are occult cumulative considerations, competitive explanations, and reasonable disagreement. Certainty is not available in the way many people wish it were. That brings us to the end of the study itself. Before we close, I want to take a moment to do something personal. After hearing all of this, some of you may wonder where I personally stand and why. I think that's a fair question. So what follows is a simple explanation of what I personally believe and why I believe it, not as an argument and not as something you're meant to adopt, but as an example of how I've tried to apply these questions, ideas, and tensions in my own life. I believe that God exists. By God, I mean a personal reality, conscious, intentional, and capable of a relationship. I am not claiming proof. My belief is not the result of one decisive argument. It is the result of many small considerations taken together over time. The strongest influence on my belief is my own personal experience. I recognize that personal experience is not universal evidence and does not obligate anyone else to believe what I believe. At the same time, personal experience is how human beings navigate most of their life. It matters, even when it cannot be transferred to others. Moral intuition also matters to me. I experience moral values as carrying real weight, not merely as preferences. This does not prove God's existence, but it raises questions for me about whether reality is ultimately indifferent or meaningful. Historical evidence plays a role. Though I am honest about its limits, there is not enough evidence to compel belief. Accepting what evidence exists involves judgment and choice. I acknowledge that openly. Philosophical arguments matter to me in a cumulative way. None of them prove God. Together, they make belief reasonable to me. When I consider existence, intelligibility, consciousness, meaning, and moral experience as a whole, belief in God makes sense to me, even though I cannot demonstrate it conclusively. I believe the Bible is inspired but deeply human. I see this as a strength, not a weakness. It reflects people wrestling honestly with God across time. I view Jesus as a uniquely inspired teacher and prophet whose life and teachings continue to challenge how we think about meaning, responsibility, and love. I do not see doubt as failure. I see it as something we live with. Human beings do not have complete access to reality. Certainty is rare in all the areas of life. The goal is not total certainty, but better questions, clearer thinking, and greater integrity. Suffering has not been a decisive obstacle to belief for me. I am cautious about universal judgments of good and evil across all human experience. I believe suffering is complex, contextual, and often beyond our full understanding. I continue to ask the question, quote, is there a God? Because the question is meaningful. The tension matters. The sharpness, it sharpens awareness and humility. I am not seeking slogans or final answers. I am seeking honesty. This is where I currently stand. You do not need to stand with me here. My hope is simply that this study has helped clarify the questions, the arguments, the limits, and the options. Well, thank you for walking through this with me. If this study has been meaningful to you, or consider sharing it with someone who enjoys careful thinking. And we will see you in the next chapter soon.